I secretly protected my business before my wife filed for divorce. She thought she'd leave with half. Turns out, she left with nothing. Hello Reddit I+ here. My name is Elijah Warren. I'm 38 years old, the founder and CEO of a cybersecurity firm based in Denver. If you met me 2 years ago, you'd have seen a man who believed in love, family, and loyalty. If you met me today, you'd meet a man who learned the cost of blind trust. Let me take you back. I met Vanessa 8 years ago at a tech conference in Austin. She was a freelance UX designer, charming, brilliant, and had a smile that could make you forget your name. I was still building my company, working out of a 2-room office with a couple of overworked interns. Vanessa believed in me, or so I thought. She moved in with me after 6 months, and we got married a year later in a quiet courthouse ceremony. No prenup. I was young, in love, and broke. She said, "Whatever we build together." I believed her. Fast forward 5 years. My company, Black Talon Security, had gone from a passion project to a multi-million-dollar enterprise. We landed a contract with a major defense contractor, and our revenue exploded overnight. I was working late nights, juggling investors, compliance teams, and tech upgrades. Vanessa, meanwhile, had quit freelancing a year earlier. She said she wanted to focus on us, but there was no us anymore. She stopped asking how my day was, stopped waiting up for me. Our conversations were reduced to small talk, dinner orders, utility bills, house repairs. Something felt off, and then I found the locked second phone. It was hidden in a shoebox in her closet, wrapped in an old hoodie. At first, I told myself it was probably just for work. But curiosity got the better of me. What I read shattered everything. Dozens of messages between her and someone saved as J explicit messages. Vacation plans, and conversations about me. He barely notices I'm around anymore. Once I get my half, we're set. He's so focused on his company, he won't see it coming. She wasn't just cheating, she was planning to gut me in a divorce. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't rage or cry or drink. I just sat in my office, staring at the blinking server light across the room. I realized something right then. She didn't love me. Maybe she never did. And worse, she saw me as a stepping stone. I contacted my attorney the next morning. Not for a divorce, but for protection. Over the next 6 weeks, I restructured the business, legally, quietly. I moved all shares of Black Talon into a newly formed holding company based in Wyoming under an irrevocable trust, ironclad, airtight, and separate from personal marital assets. My salary was minimized, and most profits were funneled into R&D or non-distributable equity. On paper, I made less than a schoolteacher. Meanwhile, I played the role of clueless husband. I booked us a weekend in Aspen, brought her flowers, let her think I was still oblivious. Then, just before our 7th anniversary, she served me divorce papers. Her face was calm, almost smug, as she handed them over in our kitchen. I remember her exact words. "Don't take it personally, Eli. It just wasn't working. I'll let my lawyer handle the rest. We'll split everything down the middle, of course." Of course. She thought she'd walk away with half of Black Talon, half of the company I bled for, half of the nights I stayed awake solving code vulnerabilities, half of the sacrifices I made when she decided to take time to find herself. She wanted the house, 2 of our cars, and $150,000 in spousal support annually for the next 5 years. Her lawyer sent a draft settlement the next day. He was cocky. I could see it in the tone of every line. But then, discovery started. My attorney handed over the documents outlining the business's ownership structure, the trust, the reorganization, the transfer timeline, all dated and signed before she filed. Her lawyer's tone changed fast. He tried to argue the business was a marital asset, but he couldn't touch it. It was protected and entirely separate. I could see the panic in Vanessa's eyes at our first mediation session, when her attorney leaned in and whispered something. She looked like someone watching a $1 million lottery ticket get sucked into a shredder. But it got worse, for her. My lawyer brought up the second phone. Yes, I had made copies of the texts and messages, enough to demonstrate an affair and marital misconduct. Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity with intent to defraud a spouse financially, that's a different ballgame. The judge reviewed our case, and in the final ruling, she got nothing. No business assets, no spousal support. She was awarded one of the cars and some furniture. That was it. She stared at me in disbelief as the judgment was read out. Afterwards, she followed me into the parking lot, tears in her eyes. "How could you do this to me, Eli?" After everything we had, I just looked at her and said calmly, "You were never planning to stay. You just thought you'd win the exit." She started to speak, but I walked away. For the first time in months, I felt peace, but it didn't end there. About 6 months later, she called me out of the blue. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. She said she'd been thinking a lot. that maybe we rushed into ending things, that she was in therapy, that she missed us. I let her speak, and then I asked her one question. Does Jay miss us too? There was a long pause, then the call ended. But a few days later, I got a message on LinkedIn from Jay. He had no idea Vanessa was married when they started dating. When he found out, she claimed we were separated but still living together. And when I cut her off financially, she turned on him, tried to move in, and maxed out one of his credit cards. He wanted to warn me, he said. I told him he was a little late. Vanessa lost both men she tried to play. I've since moved on. Slowly, but on my own terms. I've focused on work, on my mental health, on rediscovering the parts of me that got buried under betrayal. But I've learned one thing the hard way. Trust is earned once. Betray it, and all that's left is silence. And in that silence, I rebuilt everything. 3 months after that awkward LinkedIn message from Jay, I thought everything was finally behind me. Vanessa had gone quiet. No texts, no calls. Her social media went dark. I figured she'd either moved on or was too embarrassed to try reaching out again. But trouble has a way of circling back when it knows you're doing well. I was invited to speak at a tech symposium in San Diego, a huge opportunity to showcase Black Talon's growth. After my keynote, I was approached by an investor from Singapore who was interested in expanding into Asia. Things were finally clicking into place. That night, I was out with some colleagues at the rooftop lounge of the hotel when I saw her, Vanessa, sitting at the bar. She looked different, thinner, pale, dressed sharp, but worn down. She spotted me, stood up immediately, and walked over. Eli, please, just 5 minutes. I excused myself from the group and followed her to a quieter corner. She didn't even waste time pretending to be casual. I need your help. She had lost her apartment. She'd been evicted after failing to make payments. The car she was awarded in the divorce had been repossessed. She'd gone through a failed relationship and was now stuck couch surfing with an old college friend. Worse, she had been diagnosed with early-stage thyroid issues and didn't have proper insurance. She said all this with wide, pleading eyes, the same way she used to look at me when she wanted something expensive. Eli, I made mistakes. I was stupid. I let other people influence me and I paid the price. But I was there when you had nothing. Can't you help me now? I looked her dead in the eye. There was a time I would have said yes. A time I would have seen that desperate look and remembered the woman I married, the one I thought she was. But I wasn't that man anymore. You were there when I had nothing, and then you tried to make sure I had nothing again. You don't get to play both sides. She blinked hard. You really hate me that much? If I hated you, I'd want revenge. I just don't care anymore. I walked away and didn't look back. But what came next stunned even me. 2 weeks later, her mother showed up at my office. Yup, her mother, Cheryl. My assistant buzzed me nervously, saying there was an older woman insisting she has a right to see you. I reluctantly let her in. She stepped inside like she owned the place and sat down without being asked. Elijah, you've made your point. You've punished Vanessa enough, but she's still family. I almost laughed. Family? She cheated, schemed, lied, and tried to rob me blind. That's not family. Cheryl sighed dramatically, crossing her arms. You don't throw people away just because they make mistakes. She was scared, influenced by the wrong people. Like you? I asked. That shut her up. Because here's a little bonus detail I left out earlier. When I went through Vanessa's second phone, I saw a thread between her and Cheryl. Make sure he signs something before you file. He's too nice. Play that up. Cry a little if you need to. Men like him are just a stepping stone. Don't let emotions cost you the payday. Cheryl wasn't just complicit. She helped plan the whole thing. I stood up and opened the door. Tell your daughter this. There's nothing here for her. No check, no sympathy, no second chance. And as for you, don't come here again. She glared at me, lips pressed tight like she wanted to spit poison. But she said nothing, just grabbed her purse and walked out, heels clicking like gunshots down the hallway. 1 year later. Black Talon is now one of the fastest growing private cybersecurity firms in the Western U.S. We landed an exclusive contract with a Fortune 100 company and just opened a second headquarters in Boston. But beyond the business, I'm happy. Not just because I'm successful, but because I no longer second-guess myself. I'm free. The dead weight is gone. And oddly enough, something beautiful came out of the chaos. About 6 months after the divorce finalized, I reconnected with a woman I used to work with, Leah. She was in the early days of her own startup, and we bonded over coffee, mutual failures, and long walks that turned into long dinners. She never asked about my finances. She asked about my values, my dreams, my scars. We're not rushing anything, but we're building something honest. Last month, she asked me, if you could go back and erase the whole thing with Vanessa, would you? I thought about it for a moment and said, no, because without her betrayal, I wouldn't have learned how to protect myself. And without losing her, I might never have found you. Trust isn't just about love. It's about alignment. And sometimes, the best thing someone can do is betray you. Because that's when the masks fall. That's when you see people for who they really are. Vanessa thought she could leave with half my life. Instead, she taught me how to rebuild one that didn't include her at all.